Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to some, and maybe good evening to others. So thank you for joining this next in the series of the .Stat Academy webinars. Today's webinar is what's new in the .Stat suite. Just to let you know, this is not a one-off webinar, so we will continue this series of what's new in .Stat suite over different periods of time, depending on the features that are released that may be of interest to various participants here today and others that may join later. So we won't go through a complete A to Z of the .Stat suite today. It will be a quick introduction on the vision of the Data Explorer, giving some highlights of some key features that have been released recently that are, we think, are of interest and useful for you to know about. We'll also highlight a few recent released features in the Data Lifecycle Manager as well, this includes the Excel plugin. And then we'll release a little bit of time at the end for some further Q&A. But please, as we go, do not hesitate to post your questions in the chat or raise your hand, use the raise hand feature that's available, so we can try to respond to your questions as we go, and then we can also respond at the end of the presentation today. Please note that this webinar has been recorded. This is for the purpose of making it available to those who also could not attend today, and also available to you if you wish to watch this back at a later stage. You're welcome to send any questions or follow-up points or comments that you wish to make through the email at events@siscc.org. So this webinar will be facilitated by the OECD.Stat Suite product management team. This is led by Jens Dosse, and I will hand over to Jens now to start and introduce the .Stat Data Explorer vision. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Jonathan, for the introduction. So I will first start with giving you an overview of the product design vision and the design principles that we applied in the development of the Data Explorer specifically today. And then afterwards, my colleague Sandrine will give you insight into the new features recently deployed and delivered to the community. What I explain now in this introduction on the vision can also be found in the documentation on the GitLab site. So I will start first with the key learnings from the previous .Stat browser that you might know that is currently still live in many of the organizations, SIS-CC organizations. And when we developed the Data Explorer, it was very important to take these key learnings and then try, of course, to improve what can be improved. But first, we have looked into what is actually very much appreciated, and especially by the statisticians, because the data browser in .Stat was was led by the statistician, and it really implemented a lot of things that statisticians need a lot. So, for instance, we have a flexible pivot table with dimension hierarchies, advanced customizable selections for these dimensions that allow also for hierarchies, large hierarchies. We have exports into various formats, Excel, CSV, SDMX, and an open data API. the statisticians can push specific default table views and so ease the display of data and the first visualizations. There is an advanced referential metadata view, and probably .stat was most known also for this feature, where you can see here in an example on the screen, and also simple value flagging, so kind of a simple display of coded attributes, like you can see in an example here. But there were not only good things. So the idea of the review was to see where were the issues, and we have organized usability tests with users in the past years. And so we found out that it was quite complicated for users to know where we should start when we are presented with the homepage of the .stat browser. When it was often difficult to navigate through the big theme list that you can see also on the left-hand side. And so we had to think about how to improve that. What would be the meaning of the different icons that have been used. The pivot table functionality was always understood. And also the metadata pop-up that you have seen before did sometimes annoy or distracted the user. So we had to think about a different way of doing this. Also, there was not enough information about the data, so sometimes users were misled and looked at the wrong data. They didn't figure out that the indicator they were looking for was currently not displayed, and they had to change some selections. Also, the search was not sufficient enough. The charting was a bit too complicated based on the technology that was available at that time when it was implemented, and also the reuse of tables and charts was either not possible or too complicated. And last thing that was realized later on when we added the so-called data portal at the OECD with some key indicators in order to ease accessibility for these specific key indicators, but also for publications. And so we ended up actually with having two sites. So one generic for a very large public, and then the .stat browser that was more focused to the statistician. And the user journey was disruptive. So the idea in the Data Explorer was to capture both needs at the same time. And of course, we have to look in who is when using the Data Explorer, and so who are really the end users, and we have to fine-tune the features for these. So we have, for at least for the OECD, policy advisors, business analysts, researchers, statisticians, university and librarian, journalists, people working in NGOs, and citizens who are interested and have something to say, and also a lot of students, undergraduate students who use the data for their projects. And secondary user personas that we set up was for officer, PhD students, so a different type of students, and then also the general public, so general users and general business users. So these are the types of users that generally go to our websites, and when we think about features, we have to think about what they really need, what they are doing. So why are they actually coming to our sites? They prepare maybe for a conference. They need to give some advice to businesses. They need to get data to crunch them for a report, to assist for advanced data queries. Trends. We are writing a thematic book, and they need information about aspects of this book, and of course there's also fact-checking as an important need for these users. And so from these learnings, what are the key principles that we have applied for, or we are applying for developing the Data Explorer. So we have here the so-called leitmotif for the end users. So from the perspective of the end user, what we feel, what they really want is, let me easily access the organization statistical data, let me find, understand, and use the data I need. So these are really the key things that we have always to have in mind when developing new features. And the features we are talking about is finding the data through an efficient search approach, and we have to take into account that we do not speak all the same language, and that this is a development for different organizations, so we need the different brands, and the users can identify a specific Data Explorer instance within an organization. So branding is very important. When the user needs to understand the data that they have found, so really to make sure that's the data that we are looking for. And so we need appropriate data previews, charts, and contextual metadata to give all this information. And at the end, the real purpose of the user is not to stay for hours on the Data Explorer and look at tables and charts, but the goal of them is get this data, download when in formats they can use, or implement maybe automated ways of getting the data through the APIs, or share the tables or charts they have generated with other users, or bookmark these in order to find them again if they have to do this work regularly. So the really a key idea is to also ease when actually the end goal of the users, which is getting the data down from the system and doing something in their own environment. The second principle is task performance. So the UI should concentrate on the added value tasks for the users and try to automate all the rest. So there are a lot of business rules being implemented, for instance, for the default generations of tables and charts, so that the user does not have to deal with all unnecessary things. And of course, we go back to standard industry standard tools like Excel. So outputs, for instance, downloads are also in Excel format. So tools that users already know and using frequently. Users need to be autonomous. They should not need to read a lengthy user manual in order to understand the application. It needs to be intuitive with clear wording, proactive, so already make suggestions for the user, and of course be well-termed so it can be understood. And the fourth key principle is are the criteria to decide when a feature actually will be implemented. And of course, this is in the community very important when we have our prioritization exercise. So the first thing that is absolutely necessary is, of course, a feature should be implemented only if it really solves a problem that the users have. When the way it is implemented should be in a way that it's easily usable, so they do not need to search for a manual, for instance. And something also very important and often forgotten is not all the features really are useful every day, and some features, if they are not necessary for most users, then we have to find way to either do it differently. Sometimes we can all decide we do not do that at all, or we have a feature that is more for advanced users and not put on the interface for everyone in the same way, because if there are too many, then people get lost on what they see. And so if we talk about the design aspects, so applying these principles, what have we decided for the design of the application? So let's first look at the navigation flow. Coming from the organization's main website, there could be a direct link then to the homepage of the Data Explorer in order to allow searching the data. When the search is done, the result page is being shown, which has a different layout, as you can see here. And if the user has decided to look into one of the results and so actually see more details and see the data, then the application forwards to the visualization page. So we have here a third page. And the visualization page that shows tables and charts and other data-related features can also be linked directly from your organization's website. So you could, for instance, index specific pages so that not everyone actually has to go through this Data Explorer search, but users can also find them differently. So even Google could index that and directly find specific pages. So as you know, behind the scenes there is SDMX, and we use category schemes in order to generate facets for the search. And you see here facets, so navigation features that have been created out of these category schemes, like the topics here that you can see on the home page and the result page. We use the concepts and codeless that are defining the dimensions also for the facets here, like for the frequency, for the search, but also in the visualization page, the specific dimensions for the data that are being shown are visible and can be changed. And the SDMX artifact on which actually the search works and what consists as a search result, and then also on the visualization, is defined by a data flow. So the different search result items are data flows, and what users see in the visualization page is a visualization of the content of the data flow. Yeah, so the home page and the search result page are powered by Data Explorer specific search engine. And the search engine as well as the visualization page are both sourced by all the data that are in the SDMX web service. And so it's since it's a standard, an organization can link the Data Explorer to any SDMX source. So if we look a bit more in detail, the search is a faceted search. So this is also a design principle or in a design aspect of the Data Explorer. It's a new approach in statistics. It has been successfully used, for instance, by libraries, by online libraries, where you can search for books with free search, and then use facets in order to fine-tune your search results. So if you want to fine-tune the type of book, for instance, and so on. So faceted search augments the traditional text search with a faceted navigation system. And here I give an example. If the user has searched for free text economic, then he gets the search results that are highlighted, and then afterwards the user can fine-tune the search results by saying, okay, I'm looking for data flows that have data for with annual observations, and also for they should have a breakdown for sex. So I'm looking only for data for female, and using these filters will fine-tune and reduce the number of results. So like in this case, end up, for instance, with one or only a few results. And so really lead the user to where the data is he's looking for or she's looking for. Once when the user clicked on the search result, in order to see the data, more details, there should be an easy preview. And also here we try to never end up with an empty table. So we respect previous selections. If the user searched for France in the search pages, then also the table that is generated automatically should display France, so data for France. And also default selections are applied. So if you have a lot of breakdown dimensions, then the statistician, the data owner, can define to pre-selected by default only the totals of these breakdown dimensions. So it's up to the user actually to go into more breakdowns if this is actually a need. So on the data page, the user can continue doing selections for dimensions, as you can see here. So we have a consistent user journey for the filtering. And yeah, the filters are always visible, so they're eye-catching, and it's very easy for users to understand how they can change the selection. So this was a bottleneck in the .stat browser before. It should be in very fast preview. So it's very important that users do not have to wait too long to see the data, because otherwise they might just switch off the page and go somewhere else. And so here is the decision that we have taken, that we always prefer speed to completeness of the table. And so this is why we call it a preview, and did not implement or do not implement too complex and heavy features that make the table less responsive or fast. Also, the data should always be understandable. So we have invented a new features that is called row sections. I say a little bit more in another slide on this. And also things like cell merges are actually counterproductive in this. So we always think about, can the table be easily, very fast generated, and is it always understandable what is inside? It should all be responsive, so it should work also on different devices, on small devices, and we have foreseen also auto pivoting of the table. So on small devices, the table shows up in a way that is consumable, easily consumable. Aside, we tried to avoid clutter, so we removed sorting features in order to not have too much functionality that is overwhelming, and also a number of table formatting features have been completely automated and are managed by the statistician. And then, yeah, all advanced table features that fit into this fast and easily understandable table can then be done in expert features, for instance, through the download function. So here's an example of the previous table that we had. So for instance, if you look at this figure here that is framed in red, and you want to know to which dimension it relates, it's not that easy to see, because you have to go up, and then your eye has to switch to left, to the right, to the left, to the right, to see what are different dimensions. And also for the row dimension is the same. So you have to go to the left-hand side, and then your eye has to go up and down in order to see what are the different dimensions, and then find your row again where the value is. So this is to underline the issues that the usability issues that we have with very complex statistical tables that use this kind of cell merges and implicated dimensions. And so here's a slide where we show when the new table that has these row dimensions, row sections, and that ease the understanding of data. When you see them live, you will also see that they are actually sticking on the screen when you scroll. So whenever you're on a cell, it's always very easy to see to what it relates the value. And yeah, so it is perfectly responsive and shows also on small screens in the appropriate format. And so this is almost my last slide on the vision. The other very important design aspect is the easy access. So as mentioned before, so for different languages, and also for accessibility, but I let when Sandrine say more about that. Yeah, and so there are many other features that have been already implemented that are following these design principles, and some of them are mentioned then by Sandrine in the following, and others we will demo to you in future webinars. So thank you very much. Sandrine, maybe up to you.
Okay, thank you, Jens. So I will expose you the highlights of the recently released features in .stat Data Explorer. And in another part, if we still have time, I will expose you also recent release features of the .stat Data Lifecycle Manager, which is an Excel plugin. But first, start with the highlights of the Stat Data Explorer. We will talk about the accessibility feature and with some specific options that Jens mentioned. And after Jean-Baptiste will talk about Google Analytics. And the third point on this Data Explorer demo, we will also show you the unit of measure display inside the DE. So I will share my screen. So just for your information, I'm at home and there's some renovation on my roof. So it could be a bit noisy from time to time. So here I do not do exactly a fully live presentation. I made a video of what I want to show you to not have this disruption of the network. So I hope it will be not too fast and things like this, but I will talk at the same time. And normally on some slots, there will be a screen readers talking, but I don't know if you will hear it, so we will see. So let's start. So here we'll talk about the accessibility in the Data Explorer. Which has this option or feature as is born through a request from ABS, and the aim is to allow to the access to the website to people with disabilities. Sorry, and we put this in place. Some guidelines and the guidelines of the web content accessibility 2.1 and we reach the level AA and to put it in place in the Data Explorer we focused on the screen readers accessibility and also the usage of the keyboard, which is really important for all functionalities. We also made some enhancements from the first version of the Data Explorer on the color contrast. And here at this level, we are mostly on a lot of components reach the level AAA of the WCAG. And also we put in place some alternative features dedicated for the accessibility because the default ones were too limited to answer to this accessibility feature. Sorry. So the demo I will show you where you can find the detail of and I will try to compare the enable and disable accessibility support mode. So in the 3 page of the DE, so in the home page, the search page, and in the visualization page, I will take also the opportunity to show you one of the recent release feature, which is the chart download in a PNG format. So let's start. So here we are on the GitLab documentation where you can find a lot of information and specifically one about how to use the Stat Data Explorer. And here you can find the design principle and functional vision mentioned by Jens. And also in the general layout and the common features, you will have table content where you will be able to find the web content about the accessibility support. So here we are, and so you can see that in this page you have the information I just talked about, and you some screenshot of what I will expose you just after. So in the Data Explorer, we have a default mode and the possibility to change the mode to the accessibility support. Here we are on the default mode, so you can't really use, it's not so easy to use your keyboard in this mode. The best is to use your mouse. So here I clicked on the search bar, and after a general command, I click on the topic to see what is proposed. But finally, I would like to type tourism. So I just show you how you can play with it. And now I will switch the default mode to the accessibility mode. Just for your information, in the previous slide shown by Jens, the icon was really smaller, which is for the next release. But in the demos, we still have this big icon. So when we switch to the accessibility mode, we have the square, orange square, to see where we are with our keyboard. So, like for the default mode, you can, of course, type what you want to search for, and you can navigate. So, for your information, I do not use at all my mouse, which is on the top of the screen. On the screen, but I'm only using the keyboard to make my research. So here I will select the Austria as country. The second page, Data Explorer, which is the result page, with on the left hand side the filters, as mentioned by Jens. And as I'm not fully happy with the result page with my keyboard, I'm going back to the search bar to type employment and to have another result. So the aim was also to show you more information of the Data Explorer. So here you see that I type employment, and it highlights in the result page where we can find employment on some data flows. So there were 9 results, and in this first data flow, we can see that employment has been found in some dimensions, the stocks, transactions of other flows or expenditure for unemployment, and also on some attributes. So now I'm also showing you that that it's possible to have more information on the data flow with down arrow. And it shows you that you can look for, you can find some other information. For now, we have only the source, where the data flow is coming from, a date, and also the SDMX ID of the data flow. So the triplet ID with agency, the ID of the data flow, and its version. So the quarterly financial account was not exactly the data flow I wanted to show you. I wanted to look for the enterprises and employment in tourism. And just to show you the table. So here, this is a default table, because I just a quick stop. I switch the mode to show you that the default table the default table is different than the accessibility, the one for person with disabilities. but visually, it's not so easy to find the difference. The only difference is that you can play with the keyboard for the disabled persons. So here I'm playing with my mouse, and so this in this default table you can't at all play with your keyboard. So if you are fanatic of keyboard, you have to switch to the accessibility support mode. So I wanted also to show you that in this mode we are using also, you have the possibility to use a screen reader. Can you still hear me? Because I put away my micro,
yes,
useful micro, and I will try to put a bit up the sound to see if you can profit of the screen readers when it will start. Can you hear it or not? Because if not, I will put down the volume of my computer. Did you hear it?
If you play this, please play and then we'll listen.
Alors, I will, yeah, okay, so we will see. Okay, so here. Did you hear it?
No, son, no.
Okay, okay, so that's a pity, but it doesn't matter. I will continue without it. So it's the issue of this part, doesn't matter. I will put back my headphone in this case. Okay, so the aim was to show you what people with disabilities can hear when they are using a screen reader. So it doesn't matter, we will continue without it. So he's explaining at which level the user is, saying reference area, saying GERMANY, everything that the user is typing and doing. So here the user added another reference area, Germany, and we can see the results. We will also remove this country just to show you that with a keyboard we can play and do everything without using a mouse. But we have to do a lot of action to arrive to a certain position. So to go back to the table area, while we were on the filters, we have to go down on all all the list of the filters to be able to arrive to the toolbar of the table or chart part. So here it was just for you to listen the screen readers to listen what he's saying each time he's going on different features. So here we arrive on the customized features. You will see it's completely different than the default customized action box of for the table. So here we use the drag and drop feature and with your mouse. So we are on the default mode, and just by clicking the dimension you want to move on another area, such as columns or row section or activity, we click on the dimension and we move where we want to see it. So now on the accessibility mode, the customize action box is quite different because we use another DLL. And you see that the columns, the row section and rows are aligned to is usage of the keyboard, and because also the library use is also made like this. So when you want to select an element, you have to press the space bar, and like this, the element you selected in one of the area, sorry, it's going too fast. The area has been dashed to show you where you are and where you want to move the dimension. So here he moves the dimension unit of measure, which was on the row section, but not the dimension, but the attribute unit of measure, which was on the row sections, to the rows and on the bottom part of the rows. So here we see the table view, how it looks like, and if we want to apply or cancel the layout. So here we will apply the layout, and the result will be that the unit of measure has been moved to the row section, to the row, sorry. So now the aim was also to show you that with the screen reader, the screen reader is reading all the elements. So he should start saying enterprises and employment in tourism. And after he's saying reference area, Australia, frequency of observation annual. Each time you move your keyboard, is telling where you are. But in the table, I wanted you to hear, it's quite tricky because you have to know exactly, you have to be used to use such table. But for this, I would like if some of you is really interesting on this feature to have your feedback and if it's easy for person with disabilities to use this table. We did not have any really feedback about it from ABS, so it could be great that if there's feedback to give about that, it could be useful. Okay, so here, oops, this one. Voilà, so here also when he's telling us the figures, in fact, it doesn't say the figure itself. He's telling a time period 2015 for activity, tourism industries, for measure enterprises, and the unit of measure number. And after he's telling them the word, the number. And just before also in the previous cell, oops, sorry. In the cell with the B, he is also saying the content of the flag, which I think is really important because a number with the flag which can't be read by a person, it's a pity because this gives a lot of information. So now we will go to the chart part, just for you to show you how we can do a chart. So you have to do a chart. I reduce the selection of the table, the reducer table, to have a chart which is visible and easy to read. So I will select a chart bar. And here I will show you also the customized feature of the chart bar, which is a bit different than the previous versions. We put this feature on the top, while before it was down the chart. And here I'm doing some I'm highlighting some bars with colors. There's no meaning, there's no statistical meaning on what I'm doing, but just for you to have a look on what can be done. I selected the baseline, and here I will reduce the chart to show you that this is also possible. And now it was one of the recent release features. It's now possible to download this chart on PNG format. We can also share this chart with the share features, which I will not demo today, but I can show you later if we have time and if there is any interest on it. And on the share feature, you can embed also the chart, and it can be live if you select the appropriate option. But here also you notice that on my chart, the title was not so clear and was a bit too much information. So there is also the possibility to modify the title. But for this, we put in place the possibility to do it, but only for people who are internal to your organization and have the appropriate credentials. So to modify the title, it's also on the customize box. And you see now we have 2 levels in the customized box, the one I showed you before, and also the information part, where you can change either the title, the subtitle, the source label. And you can also remove the logo and remove the copyright. So here, as my graph is about enterprises, I will remove enterprises and I will specify that the data are for Austria. And I don't need anymore the subtitle, so I will remove the subtitle. Here I use reset arrow, which allow me also, if I change my mind, to go back to the original text. But finally, I remove it. So, and the source label, I leave it. The data are coming from the enterprise and employment in tourism data flow. So I leave it like this. And we notice also that the unit of measure, the dimension, is stay visible. That's it for the accessibility highlights. I hope it was not too fast, or it was enough clear, even if we had not the opportunity to hear the screen readers. So now I will leave the floor to Jean-Baptiste, who will talk about Google Analytics, and after I will come back to talk about the unit of measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandrine. Hello, so I'm sharing my screen. I hope that you can see it. Please let me know if you don't. So my name is Jean-Baptiste Nona. I'm a business analyst for the product management team. And I'm going to talk about Google Analytics plugged to the Data Explorer. So first, a few words about the context. We released a first version of the feature back in 2018. That was part of our project with the INS of Tunisia. But then in the year after, when we moved to DevOps, we had to kind of rebuild and refactor the mechanism for tracking the information from the Data Explorer into the Google Analytics. That's why we came up with demoing, making a short demo today on that. Also, obviously, we had to update our documentation, and I will now move to the documentation website. So here's our website and the documentation around the .stats data analytics. So what do we have today? Well, Google Analytics is able to receive information. I would say, on the different audience and usage of one instance of the Data Explorer. I'm not going into technical details here, but if you are, let's say, a system administrator, when you are responsible for deploying the Data Explorer in your organization, then you will need from Google Analytics to create first what they call a tracking ID, and then provide it to your deployment strategy, whether it's from Docker, from source code, it works the same. Then once this is correctly set up and deployed, well, you know that now Google Analytics is able to record, always in an anonymous and secure way, a lot of information regarding the different activities and usage of the Data Explorer for producing trends and indicators. So here, a key point for us regarding the indicators. Going back to our project with INS Tunisia, the requirements were that we had to produce a specific set of indicators, and specific in the sense that they are whether related to the Data Explorer features, or they are really specific to the type of data we publish. I would say, for instance, the number of Data Explorer user per data flow, which is the data SDMX data view per period, or the number of downloads with the different types of format for the CSV, or then download in Excel, download of chart representation in PNG, and so on. So that's what our goal was, to be able at least to reproduce these indicators. And we came up to use what Google Analytics call events. That's the concept of the events in Google Analytics in order to distinguish different concept for the DE, which is the data flow, which is the data view that you are going to view and maybe later on download or share and view a shared object. So these are our first basic concept in Google Analytics. And from these concepts, these events, we drill down to define a set of event categories that reflect these concepts, and then event actions per category. So we have the viewed data flow for data flow concepts. We have the types of downloads. We have the let's say the representation for a shared object, whether you will share a table view or a bar chart, scatter chart, and so on. And the same for the view shared object. So we try to keep it as generic as possible for the future evolution of the D. For instance, we can easily imagine that we could have a new type of chart, like a new bubble chart. So we need to be able to easily introduce that new concept in the mechanism with Google Analytics. So now I will move to Google Analytics itself. So here's the home page. For those who are already familiar with Google Analytics, you know that there is a lot of feature out of the box. regarding the generic audience, the number of user sessions per period, regarding the demographic information or the location, and so on and so forth. I won't go here into these different details. I just want to focus on two areas and what it could be related to what we did specifically for the DE. The first one is the event overview in the behavior. And then I will quickly show the custom dashboards. So first, the event overview. This is where you find the information about the events. So where we define these concepts for the Data Explorer. So you have the event category with the total events per these type of categories. So for instance, giving this default date range, I will have 142 total events over data flows. We'll have, for instance, 40 downloads, 9 viewed shared views, 2 shared objects, and so on. I have the event action, which is kind of split of of the categories. So there is, for now, the duplicates of data flow and viewed data flow, which is the same total. I have the different total number of downloads per type, the different total events for the type of shared object, and so on. And the last concept we have here is the event label. Just here a comment, you can ignore the first line where you see this redacted potential email address. This is, since this GoAnalytics version is plugged to one of our quality assurance test environments of the DE, this relates to a kind of edge case we are currently fixing. So please ignore the first one. Here, the event label will show you the total number of events for the date range that happens to a specific data view, so the SDMX data flow. So you have the localized name of the data flow that was viewed from the visualization page, so the key short-term economic indicators. And then you see 4 properties. The second one is the data flow ID. Then we have the agency and the version. And the first one, staging SIS-CC stable, that is the data source. We have to include the data source, here being the .stat.dlm data space where the data is stored. We have to include it because the Data Explorer is able to retrieve and index from more than one source. So in order to have proper indicators and information in the GoAnalytics, we have to avoid duplicates. So we include, in tracking the information about data flow, we include the data source ID. All right, so it's really, I would say, addicting here to drill down, click and drill down everywhere to see what happens for data flow, see the different information, drill down to event by data flow, and so on. So I let really users that really interesting to explore these features. The second part I want to show is the custom dashboard. So if you prefer to, or if you need to build or to share dashboards, but static or dynamic indicators, I think one easy way to do it is to create dashboards. So here's, for instance, is one I've created. It's a very simple one of flat tables. I'm trying to reproduce here these kind of indicators. So I can these are tables, simple table, but you can also create really different type of representation. So I can show you one, maybe to try to replicate this one. So dashboards uses widget. So you add widget. Let's say we'll try to reproduce the number of download per type in a bar chart. So here I'm going to create a bar chart showing, so always remember, at least for the specific to the Data Explorer metrics, we are dealing with events. So I'm going to look for the total events grouped by the event actions. Action being here the download. But I don't want to get all the different event action. I need to add a filter only showing the event category being containing or matching exactly whatever the downloads. Okay, so I save, and voila, I have the number of downloads per type with the same information. Okay, so dashboards, they are very flexible. You have just a limit of 12 widgets with one dashboard. You can export it as PDF. You can configure different time range, and you can whether keep it private or share it outside. Sorry. The last one, yeah. So back to our documentation, just to finish, that you can find out the information about these dashboards, how to add new dashboards, and here we reproduce the different configuration for being able to reproduce the specific sets of indicators that we maintain here, and we will surely make these grow in the future. So that's it. Thank you. And
on what we will show you now, because we are short in time now, and so I have the goal to show you the Excel add-in plugin instead of the unit of measure, which could be the subject of a webinar, because it's quite a complex feature if we want to show you something really deep and detailed. So the same for the Excel add-in. I made a small video, so it's 6 minutes. So I don't know if we still have. Yeah, I don't share my screen. Sorry, I don't know if we still have time for 6 or 7 minutes. Nathan,
Go ahead.
Okay. So here it's will be the demo about Excel add-in, where I will show you how to extract data flow from this add-in. I will show you how to edit and save data in Excel and the impact on the data flow in the DE. I will also show the data file in DLM, and you will see that this data can be refreshed in the Excel add-in, and we will see the result on the DE and the Excel. So here we have two screens, one for the Excel and one for the DE, and we have the .stat DLM add-in on the set on my Excel, and I've just selected in the new table a source where to extract data flows. So I selected one space, and here I will select one data flow, the same as before. I selected enterprise and employment in tourism. I don't want all the data, I just want the data for Germany. So I will filter the data only for Germany. I select it and I apply the filters. I do not touch to the other dimension and insert this data into the Excel sheet through a flat format like the CSV format. So here I will just normally review the table just to have a shorter selection for 2017 and 2000 to have something similar to the data flow we have on the right part of the screen. And we can compare that the data are similar once the layout is finished. So I order a bit the information to his reading through the measure dimension and the time period dimension. So here we can see that the data are similar with what we have on the D. So we take one, the enterprise accommodation. So enterprise accommodation, you can see 32031. Sorry. And 2018 is for now 31727. And I will change this value, only this value. So to change a data, you have also to have the appropriate permission to change them. So when I will ask the .stat DLM add-in to save only the selected data, it will ask me my credentials. So I put my credentials. And it will tell us that he saved one observation. So we will refresh the D. So for now we have 31727 for the year 2018, and it should be now 32000, 32,000. Yay. So now I will do another edition of the data. So all the 2017, I will round them for enterprise to show you that you can also do a more bigger change in your table. So just for your information, I just made the change for the values, but you could also add flags or change the flags if you want to do it. So here I selected only 7 data on the table, but as there is some hidden row, the tool said that I said 141 observation, which was not, he saved what was already before. So here we can see that the change has been done and with just a refresh of the D. So you can work on the Excel add-in easily and refresh your data in the D. Here, I just want to show you that I will use the DLM to upload the new data for the employment measure for 2018. There's no data at all for this measure for 2018 for Germany. So I go to the DLM, I upload the data, so I select the SDMX file, which is the format we see on the screen, and I select the space where I want to download this data. Of course, the data flow structure already exists on the space. And I have a notification telling me that it's successful, that 8,000 observation was loaded from the data demo import CSV file to the space SIS-CC reset data flow CFE DF Tourism Enterprise. Now we do a refresh on the D to see if the work was really successful. And I do in parallel a refresh on the Excel document. And you can see in the Excel document that the 2018 was added. Like we can see on the D that the data were also added. I think I have not so much more to say, just it was the demo of the Excel add-in plugin, which I think was important to share with you. So thank you all, and I leave the floor to Jonathan.
Thank you, Sandrine. Thank you, Jean-Baptiste, and thank you, Jens, for that. We're a little over time. We have many questions that came in the chat, and I think we've responded to the majority of them, if not all of them. We will go through all of them. We have the history of those, so we'll go through all of those, and we'll follow up individually if your question has not been answered. If anyone has any burning remaining question that they wish to ask, please post it in the chat now, or raise your hands. Okay. Okay, as all the material, the video, and the presentation that was made by Jens at the beginning on the vision will be shared after this webinar. We'd like to thank you all for your participation and your interest. As mentioned at the very beginning, this will be there will be further What's New in .stat Suite webinars, where we'll bring you updates periodically on new feature releases and dive into specific features like the unit of measure that require a bit more time and information sharing at a later date. So again, thank you everyone. Have a good day wherever you are, or good evening, and we'll hope to see you next time. Thank you.